We're in Daf Tesayin Amid Beis. I think we're by the two dots Achal Tevel Maiserishin, about 12 lines from the bottom. Achal Tevel Maiserishin. We said in the Mishnah, someone who eats Tevel is Tvua that has not had the proper Trumas and Maisus taken off of it. He gets Malchus. Amrav, Achal Tevel Shel Maiser Ani Loika. If somebody eats Tevel, now there's a number of things they have to take farmer has to first, he has to take off Truma, he has to take off Meiser, he has to take Meiser Rishon, he has to take off, depending on which year it is in the Shemitah. It's 4 years that he takes off Meiser Sheni, and 2 years that he takes off Meiser Ani. Meiser Ani goes to Aniyim, goes to poor people. It's the least stringent of all the things that you have to take off, because all it is that you have to give it to an ani, but there's no restriction on who could eat it once you give it to an ani. Once the ani gets it, he can give it right back to you to eat. He can give it to anyone. He can leave it on the street. It's just a tzedakah. Masha'in can eat truma. Only a kain could eat it. It can't be eaten betuma. Ma'aser sheni has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Even ma'aser rishon that goes to a lady, it's also for him to eat it until he takes off from the ma'aser, from the Meiser, the Trumas Meiser. He has to take off 1/10 of that and give it to a Kohen. So everything has restrictions on it except for the Meiser Ani. But so Rav is coming to say, if you have something that didn't have the Meiser, just the Meiser Ani was the only thing that wasn't taken off of it, he still gets Malchus. There's Malchus even for something that's only Tevel because the Meiser Ani wasn't taken. Kaman, who is a Slaiki Aitana, the Tanya, Amr B'Yesi, Yochel Echayev El Ala Tevel, Shalhu Mimenu Koliko. I might say that you're only going to be chayiv on tevel that nothing was taken off of it, meaning that it didn't have even the truma or the mais rishon or meiser sheni or meiser ani. Nothing was taken off it. That's what you get malchus. Hurim imenu truma gedoyla, but hurim imenu meiser rishon, meiser rishon or meiser sheni, v'afilo meiser ani minayin. How do you know that if you just took off the truma but you didn't take off meiser rishon, or you took off meiser rishon but not meiser sheni, or it's one or the other. It's either he didn't. The last thing is either Ma'aser Sheni or Ma'aser Ani. How do you know if he even didn't take off just one of those things, and he eats the tevel, he eats the produce that didn't have the proper tithes, the proper matanas taken off of it, even if it's just the Ma'aser Ani. The Torah says the gabi the chiyuv of tevel. Lesucha lechol b'sharecha ma'aser the goncha siroishcha v'yitzrecha b'charis b'charcha v'tzancha v'chol nedracha shetil v'veisecha truma yadecha. That's the original pasuk that tells you you can't eat it. And it says you should eat it. That's talking about that after when you take all the maasros in the 3rd year, which is the year of Meiser Ani, when you take that off, then you're going to be allowed to eat. So since he uses Bisharecha to refer to Meiser Ani, so when it says Lesucha Lecha Bisharecha, that's also referring to something which is missing the Meiser Ani. Malalon Meiser Ani, Afkan Meiser Ani. The Torah said alav that you cannot eat your tvua until the Meiser Ani was removed. Amr Rav Yosef says, although you're saying we have our Mishnah that says that if you eat tavel, going to be Chai Malchus, and Rav is saying that means even tavel shemaiser ani. It's really a machlokes tanaim. Rav Yosef ketanai. It's a machlokes tanaim. Rav Lazar ain't tzarich likros es hashem al maiser ani shel demai. Demai is a reference to when someone purchases tvua, he purchases produce from a amaretz, so someone who's unlearned, he doesn't know the rules so well. So the din is that we assume he took off truma. Truma was very well known, even though today we don't know anything. Back then, it was an agricultural society. There was everyone understood, everyone was aware you have to take off truma and give it to the kohen. So that was not really a problem with buying from Amaretz. But the other matnas kuna, which is Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni and Meiser Ani, that they were more suspect on. So Rebbe Elazar says, if you bought produce from a Amaretz, Ein tzarich likros Hashem al Meiser Ani shel Dmai. He says, even so, there's no need to separate Meiser Ani of Dmai. Meaning, when you buy from Amaretz, you don't have to separate the Meiser Ani. But the Chacham say, Kairos Hashem, you do have to separate it. You have to say, this is the Meiser Ani of what I got from this Amaretz. But he doesn't have to, he has to call it, he has to designate it, say this is the Meiser Ani, but he need not physically remove it from the produce. This is one of the more counterintuitive notions that we come across very often when we talk about Trumas and Meisers, which is there are two separate tracks when you talk about the Chiyuv to separate Trumas and Meisers. First of all, there's the Kedusha part of it, that you have to take this Truma and separate it, and then after you separate, they say this is Truma, and now it is a monetary outfit. And the same thing with Meiser Rishon, you have to give it to a Levi. And the same thing with the Meiser Ani. Meiser Ani you have to give to an Ani. After you separate it, it has to go to an Ani. But the problem with the Meiser Ani is that you could really eat Meiser Ani. Right? There's nothing that says that you're not allowed to eat. Once you give it to the person who it belongs to, he could give it right back to you if he feels to do so. So when you have over here, when you have a suffix, this is something that you bought from a Amaretz. So it's a possibility that Meiser Ani wasn't separated. So the Aniyim don't have a monetary right to take it from you because it's a suffix. And when we come to a suffix, the din is Hametz Mechaver Levaraya. You're trying to come take from me your monetary rights as an Ani to take it away from me. We're talking about Aniyim as a group. It's obviously not any specific Ani, but the group of Aniyim. They're coming to say, they're telling me I have to give up the Meiser Ani that I bought from the Tvur that I bought from Amaris. I can tell them, listen, it's only a suffix that he didn't separate the Meiser Ani, so I don't have to give it to you. So he says, all you have to do is say this is Meiser Ani, and then you could go eat it for yourself. Seems purposeless, but the Torah said you have to separate Meiser Ani. So you take care of the Kedusha aspect of it, that it has to be designated as Meiser Ani. But once you designate it, you can keep it for yourself because no one has a claim on it because it's only a suffix. And they might by a suffix, you can't all of a riot. So that's what. So these Chachamim, Rabbanan argue on Rebbe Elazar. Rebbe Elazar said you don't have to do anything with this. You don't even have to designate it. Chum said you have to at least designate it, but then you don't have to afterwards do anything. You can just keep it for yourself. So my that this is their argument. They're arguing about the original din that Rav had said that if you have tevel that didn't have the Meiser Ani removed from it, does it have a shem tevel? So the Manda Amar that says you have to be kaira shem, that you have to separate the Meiser Ani, holds that if it was Vada, it would be tevel unless you separate Meiser Ani. The other Manda Amar says no, that he holds not like Rav had asserted. He holds that even if it's a Vada tevel that didn't have Meiser Ani removed from it, that's not enough to make a lav, and therefore this person can just go ahead and eat it without doing anything because it's only a suffix. I mean, because of the suffix of something that there's not even a malchus on it, there's not a lav on it, there's no need for him to even separate the Meiser Ani in the first place. If that's the case, why are they making the machloikas by this complicated case? They're talking about where it's a demai, and the question is whether he has to separate it. Just say straight out. They're being chaylik about whether you're required to separate Meiser Ani. It must be that everyone agrees you do have to, it does become tevel even if just the Meiser Ani wasn't removed. One Madama says, no, you don't have to separate anything. There's no chiyuv on you to designate it as Maiserani, because Amaretz will also separate Maiserani. Everyone is very, very big tzaddikim on things that don't cost them anything. What does it cost them? All the ani has to do is say, I'm giving 10% of this as Maiserani, and then he goes and he keeps it for himself, like we said, because we were saying, like we said, there's no Makkos. It's not going to have a din tavel in any case. So there's no Isser Achila. It's only a problem of Gezel Aniyim, that you're stealing from Aniyim, by the Vada, you certainly have to give it to the Ani. As far as stealing, that they're not so worried about. As long as they can just say something and take away the Bein Adam L'Makam, the fact that it's really the moment of Aniyim, that he'll separate it and he'll deal with the consequences of being considered of having the way the ani will look at it is it's just I'm being a sharp businessman. I separated it, so I avoided getting my iser lav for tevel. But now, as far as paying up to the ani, that just like all my other debts, I won't pay this one either. Rabbanan Savri, even the trichalei milsalei mafresh. Rabbanan say no. He's not going to do it because it's a pain in the neck. I have to go separate it, and then I'm going to keep it for myself, and I'm anyway going to be over on a lav. So yeah, whatever. I'm not just going to bother with the whole thing. I'll just keep it and not worry about it. So therefore, you do have to separate. You do have to separate. So a Mishnah had said a machlokes between Rav Shimon and the Rabbanan, whether you have to, what's the shear of eating tevel that you're going to be chayiv on? What do you mean? If you eat ant is less than a kazayis, so if you eat one grain of tevel, you should also be chayiv because it's a barrier, just like an ant is. So Shimon's reason that he said less than a kazayis of tevel you're going to be chayiv on is because he said that a chita, one grain of that's your chayiv on aval bekemach. But if you're talking about flour, that's not a barrier. That's discrete particles. They're very called kazayis. Even if Shimon would agree, you have to eat a kazayis. Rav Yirmiyah Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Rav Yirmiyah said b'shem Rav Shimon ben Lakish. He has a different nusach of Rav Shimon ben Lakish. He says kamachlekes bezu kach machlekes bezu. He holds, like the Gemara is going to show in a minute, that Rav Shimon in the Mishnah held that you never chayiv, you're always going to be chayiv on any amount, even on flour. He holds the shear of kazayis is halacha l'moshe misina that only applies like I'd be bringing a carbon. But as far as getting malchus, any amount is going to be chayiv your malchus. Tanan amalem Shimon yata moiden liyibaychon nebala kolshu shuchayiv amalem neshi kriyasei amalem afa chita achas kriyasei chita in kamachloi. So the Gemara asks on the second shita, the shita of Rav Yirmiyah, who says that Rav Shimon holds you even to be chayiv on flour, but our Mishnah said it's only because it's kibriyasa, because it's just like a chita. A chita is just like an amala, just like you chayiv for an amala, you also chayiv for a grain. So why would you say that it's his? He argues even on flour. That which Rav Shimon argued, he was just saying, according to you, the Rabbanan, I hold that really only chayiv even for a mashu, even for one speck of flour. Ella detchu, even according to you, that you say it has to be a kazayis. At least be moided to me that a single grain is a barrier, and you should be chayiv for that, even if it's less than kazayis. It's only a live thing that has a din of a barrier, but a chita, a single grain of wheat, does not have a chashivas of a barrier like an ant. Tanya Kavas de Yirmiyah. We have a raya to Rav Yirmiyah that the Rav Shimon argues even on a mashu. Shimon Oimer kolshu lamakas le'amur kazayis eladi in carbon. He says any kolshu who gets malchus, that which we say kazayis is only legabi getting a carbon. So you see over here, he's saying his shita even on flour. It's not just because it's a barrier. And in a Hanami, you see that in the Mishnah we argued, it was just the Shitase of the Rabban. Look the Mishnah. And we're going to continue our list of things that get Malchus. Ha'eichel bikurim, someone who eats bikurim, actually karaleim. When someone brings bikurim, right, you have to take the first fruits of the year to Yerushalayim. He brings it to Yerushalayim, he leaves it, I think, at the Beis HaMikdash, and he says a certain parsha, he says the parsha bikurim, that the chiyuv on the owner to read it. But he didn't do that. And then someone, it's supposed to be left for the Kohanim, and a Kohen that went and ate it before the owner had said the kriya that he's supposed to do. Kachei kachim chutz l'kayim. If he ate kachei kachim outside of the klayim, which is the curtains around the Mishkan, which is the equivalent of eating kachei kachim outside of the Beis HaMikdash. The kachei kachim have to be eaten in the Beis HaMikdash or in the Mishkan. So we say over here, we talk about the Mishkan, but it will be the same thing outside of the Beis HaMikdash. You chayiv malchus on that. Kachim kalim u'maiser sheni chutz l'kayim. Kachikalim and Ma'aser Sheni, both those things have to be eaten inside Yerushalayim. If he ate them outside Yerushalayim, he's chayiv malchus. Hashover se'etzem bePesach hatar. If someone broke a bone of a Pesach, that is a kosher or carbon Pesach. It didn't become tamei, a regular carbon Pesach. There's a din etzem le'sishbruvam, and he broke a bone, he's going to get malchus. Hareza like Rabbi. All these things get malchus. Aval hamoiser betar. If someone leaves over, it is a carbon Pesach, that's tar, that's a kosher carbon Pesach, and he leaves it, even though it's kosher, and he leaves it over past the Zman, where they're allowed to eat the carbon Pesach, which is till the next morning, and he didn't finish eating it. He's ve'hashover betamei, or someone breaks a bone of a tamei carbon Pesach, eino like Rabbi. Both of these don't get malchus for different reasons. Meiser, we know why. We've had a number of times. The Meiser is a lav shenitik l'aseh. The Torah says, don't leave it over, and if you leave it over, you have to burn it. So lav shenitik l'aseh, you don't get malchus. And a shayver b'tamei, since it's not a kosher or carbon, the din of shayver, that you're not allowed to break the bone, is only if the carbon is still valid. Once it becomes tamei, there's no din malchus on it. Hanoitel, and now we're getting to the din of shiluach hakan, which we brought this section of the Mishnah earlier. Hanoitel eim ha'rabanim. If someone takes a mother bird from on top of the chicks or the eggs, Yehuda says, the Torah says in essay, Shalach to Shalach as aim, that you should send away the mother. He says that's just an extra essay on top of the lav. There's a lav that you shouldn't take the eggs without sending away the mother, and there's an essay you should send away the mother when you take away the eggs. But they're both, it's a lav and an essay on the din that you're not allowed to take the eggs without sending away the mother. They say no. Even though you were over on the lav, the essay is menatek the lav. So all he has to do now is send away the mother afterwards. The Rabbanan hold no. It's an essay. Any essay that's included together with the lav is not just added on to the lav, but rather it's a lav shenitik essay, and you're not going to be mechayev on it. Amar Rabba bar Chana Rabbi Yechanan. This original din, we're going back to the first din of the Mishnah, that if someone ate bikurim before the owner made the kriya on it, he's going to be chayev malchus. Zu divrei Rabbi Akiva stimta. This is a stam Mishnah like Rabbi Akiva. Abba Chacham ma'imrim bikurim hanacha ma'akaves ben. Kriya ein ma'akaves ben. The Rabbanan disagree. They say that you're not going to be chayiv malchus if the hanacha, if the person the owner had not placed the bikurim down by the Beis HaMikdash, but the kriya, the lack of a kriya is not ma'akav on it, and it's already considered bikurim, even though he didn't do the kriya, and you're still going to be, even though you didn't do the kriya, there's not going to be malchus if the kohen eats from it. That means if the kohanim are not going to be mechuyev malchus, they will be mechuyev malchus if the hanacha wasn't done on the bikurim, but the kriya is not lihikuva. There's no kriya. If they didn't do a kriya, the kohanim are not going to get malchus. Why are you saying this b'shem that's Rabbi Akiva Keneged Echad. Say it's Reb Shimon, because we're about to say a very long brisa that says b'shem Reb Shimon that there's Makkos if you didn't do the kriya. So why are you saying b'shem Reb Kiva? Hakamashlan the Reb Kiva Reb Shimon Svirulei. This is no. So the Gemara says the reason why we're saying that this is Reb Kiva is because Reb Kiva holds like Reb Shimon. This is really Reb Shimon Shita that if you didn't do the kriya of on Bikurim, it's going to be a Chiyav Malchus. My Reb Shimon. What's Reb Shimon? The Tanya. And we're just going to, in passing, going to do this very long brisa. We're just going to pass, in passing, at the beginning, mention the Shita. We're never really going to get back to it, but because we're just bringing this to show that he holds this. The Tanya. Utrumas Yadecha. The pasuk says, this is Devarim, in Devarim Yud Beis pasuk Yud Zayin. It says, Lesucha lecha b'sharecha. You can't eat outside of Yerushalayim b'sharecha. Maisa de goincha. The siroishcha, yitzrecha, the meiser of your dagon, which is your grain, and siroishcha and your wine, yitzrecha and your oil, a b'chayris b'charcha, and the b'chayrim of your animals, tzeincha of your oxen and your sheep, b'chol nedurecha, ashertida, all the nedarim that you'll make, v'nidveisecha, and the nedavas, trumas yadecha, and your truma. So Rav Shimon starts from the end, and he darshans this whole pasuk that's saying that you're not allowed to eat these things outside Yerushalayim. So he says, "Utrumas yadecha, elu bikurim." This last thing that it says in the pasuk that you can't eat it out of Yerushalayim, that's talking about bikurim. Amar Rav Shimon ba zalamdeinu. What is it coming to tell you about bikurim? Im la'oichel chutz l'chayma. If it's coming to tell you what the pasuk seems to be saying, the pashtus, that you're not allowed to eat it outside Yerushalayim, kal v'chayim ma'aser hakal. I could bring you a kal v'chayim from Meiser Sheni. Or ma Meiser akal la'oichlin chutz l'chayim loika b'kurim le'kol shekain. Since the Torah, we know there's a law that you can't eat Meiser Sheni chutz l'chayim. Certainly b'kurim can't be eaten chutz l'chayim. So there's no reason for the pasuk to tell it to you. Halay ba'akasav el la'oichlin b'kurim actually karale and shulaika. So this is the Rav Shimon that the Gemara was referencing, that if a kayan eats from the bikurim before the kriya, he's going to get Malchus. Since it's not needed for the Iker din of the pasuk to tell you that you can't eat Yerushalayim, we say it's coming to tell you the din that you can't eat bikurim, a kain can't eat bikurim before the kriya. And now we're going to go in reverse order through that pasuk. I'm going to say, so we already concluded the part that's relevant to us, and now we're going to just get into trouble, as the Gemara likes to do. I'm going to continue reading the brisa. So the brisa goes in the reverse order in that pasuk. The next starting from the end is v'nidvaisecha. It says that you can't eat nidvaisecha chutz l'chayim. Mezut taidu shlam. That's talking about a carbon taidu shlamim. These are carbonas that are brought as a nedava. Person decides he wants to bring a taidu, he wants to bring a shlamim, and it's telling you, Amr Rav Shimon ma'aba zelam. And Rav Shimon says again, what does the Torah have to tell you this? If they tell you that you can't eat it chutz l'chayim, like the pashtus of the pasuk, kal v'chayim ma'aser. You learn it out from Meiser, that the Meiser already you're not allowed to eat outside Yerushalayim. And as the Gemara is going to explain, we're going to go through each thing, what the chumrah was over this thing over Meiser. So we'll say this Toida and Shlam more chumrah than Meiser. So if Meiser you can't eat outside, there's allowed to eat outside of the Yerushalayim. So too is Toida and Shlam. What's coming to tell you is that part of the main part of the avodah that makes a carbon into it, where it makes it roy lachila, is the zrika. So if it's coming to tell you that if you ate from it before the zrika, that he gets malchus. Or b'chayros zeha b'char. So we're going again back to reverse order the pasuk b'chayros, that they have to be eaten inside Yerushalayim. Amar Rav Shimon ma'abaz lamdenu im la'ichin chutz l'chayim kal v'chayim ma'aser. Again, we have a kal v'chayim. A bachar is more chachar that you have to give it to a carbon, and to a kayin, and the kayin brings it a carbon and then he eats it. So it belongs to the kayin and then he brings it a carbon and eats it. So we can read a kal v'chayim ma'aser. That the ma'aser has to be in Yerushalayim, certainly a bachar, which is more common than ma'aser sheni has to be in Yerushalayim. If im lifnei zrika, and if you want to say it's coming to tell you that if you eat it before the zrika of the carbon of the bachar was done, kal v'chayim b'taidu shlamim, I can bring you a kal v'chayim b'taidu shlamim. And if someone who's not a kayin eats from the bachar after zrika, then he's going to get malchus. It's telling you the din that has to be eaten by a kayin and not by a zar. Then the pasuk continues, "B'charcha v'tzayncha zu chatas v'asham." Amar Shimon ma bazel amdeinu im la'ichin chutz l'chaim mekal v'chaim ma'aser. Again, we have a kal v'chaim ma'aser that if you bring a chatas and asham, it can't be eaten chutz l'chaim. Im l'fnei zikra kal v'chaim mitaydu shlam. The guy be eating before zrika, we have a kal v'chaim mitaydu shlam. Im la'acha zrika to be eaten by a zar kal v'chaim b'char. So what is it coming to? El ba'akasav el la'ichin michatas v'asham el la'ichin michatas v'asham. I feel la'acha zrika. Chutz l'klayim. If he eats it in Yerushalayim, but outside of the Beis Hamikdash, this is kachim kachim. It has to be eaten in the Beis Hamikdash. Shul like that he gets Makkos. Then we finally say nidurecha zu oila amar Shimon ma bazel amdeinu. What is it coming to teach about an oila? Im loichon chutz l'chayim kav l'chayim ma'asim. If nezri kav l'chayim mu'tay du shlam. Im lachazir kav b'char. Chutz l'chayim kav l'chayim mechatas v'asham. It's a little bit like chad gadya. Right? Each thing you add on, you learn all the other things that we've previously learned from a kal v'chaimer, from all the previous limudim. Haloi ba'akasav ella. Oh boy, I forgot to turn the page on this thing. Ella la'oichel min ha'oila la'achad zrika. It's coming to tell you that if you eat from ha'oila la'achad zrika, afilu b'fnim, meaning even if it's an oila is something that you're not allowed to eat from at all. So if you eat from an oila, even after Zrika, and even a Kayin, that he's going to get Makkos because you're not allowed to eat oil at all. So Amarava. So that's what we learn all these different limudim, because even though the pasuk says that we're talking about not eating outside of the Chaimis Yerushalayim, really all those things we can learn from a Kal V'Chaim of Ma'aser Sheni. So we all learn all these things with the Kal V'Chaim. The Gemara later on is going to ask, I in Masir Minadin, you're not allowed to learn to give a Makkos from a kal v'chaimer. But now, before we get to that, Amarava, the Yalida Eme Rav Shimon Tailed, V'loy loy Tailed. Rav Shimon is a grace goyin, and he said a wonderful Tartaira, and from everyone should say, I want my children to be born like Rav Shimon, otherwise it's not Kedai. Rav Shimon is Gevaldik. Ba'avagav this, that's first he was buttering him up. But then Rava finishes off. You could ask a pircha on all of his kal v'chaimers that he used to learn out from Meiser and from all the other things. My chumra the bikurim Meiser. You said you can learn out bikurim that has to be eaten outside Yerushalayim from Meiser with the kal v'chaimer. What's the chumra of bikurim of a Meiser? Shechein asurim lezarim, because bikurim is only allowed to be eaten by a kayit, and Meiser can be eaten. Meiser sheni can be eaten by anyone as long as you're in Yerushalayim. Adarabba, Meiser Chamor, Shechein Asal Oinen. Meiser is not allowed to be eaten by someone in the day after, when he becomes an Oinen, before he becomes a regular Avel, the first day he's an Oinen, before the Kfura, he's Asti Meiser, and there's no such Isser on Bikurim. So that's a Percha in one way that Bikurim is less Chamor than Meiser. So you can't learn out that from Meiser that it should be eaten Chutz L'Chaim. What was the chumrah of Taida and Shlomo over Maisa? We said also you could learn out that it's eaten in the, it should be eaten, there's going to be a lot for eating it outside of Yerushalayim. Shechein tunin matan dam ve'emurim, the guy mizbech. Taida and Shlomo are a regular carbon that you have to take away, you have to bring on the mizbeach and burn the blood and the matanas. He burnt on the mizbech, which Meiser Sheni is just eaten by its owner. When you pay the Meiser Sheni, you have to use a coin that is commissioned by the king. You can't use a plain piece of silver. Masha Enke, when you're coming to be paid a carbon, if a carbon comes tamei, then you have to be paid it. You redeem it from kodshim. You could use anything. It doesn't have to be a coin at all. It doesn't have to be silver. You could give any object to be paid it. So that's a chumrah of meiser. My chumrah the bechar mitaydu shlamim. Then we said you can learn out bechar from taydu shlam shechein kedushasei berachem. Bechar is a chumrah that as soon as it's born, it's kaddish. Masha enke in the taydu shlam only when the owner is mekadesh it. Other abba taydu shlam chamurim. Taydu shlam have a chumrah over bechar shechein tunin tzmicha nechasim b'tenufa b'chazav b'shaik. They have all these different dinim. The owner has to be saimach on it. He has to rest his hands on it, and he has to pour wine on the mizbeach when he brings it, and he has to wave the chazav b'shaik. So that's a chumrah of the um, of a bechar. I'm sorry, of Taido Shlamim over a bechar. So you can't learn out the din that you learn out from there. And what is the chumrah of chatas and asham over bechar? Shechein kachim kachim. Adarabba bechar chamash shechein kedush hasem erechem. And again, has the same chumrah that it had over shlamim, a taidan shlamim, it also will have over chatas and asham. Or my chumrah the oila mechatas. He said you can learn out from oila chatas, oila from a chatas, but asham shechein kalo, that the oil is fully burned. Adarabba chatas asham chamir. That they provide a kapara. Mashakein most oilers abur as a nadava, so it doesn't provide a kapara. That's a chumrah of chatzis and asham, so you can't learn out one from the other. But kula chamir oila, and all of them have a chumrah of oila. The isbu shtei achilas. That legabe we're talking about whether you could eat it chutz l'chaima. These things are all they're brought on the Beis Hamikdash, and they're also part of it is eaten either by the kayin or by the owner. Or in case of Ma'aser Sheni, that it's eaten, it doesn't even have to be a kayin, it doesn't even have to be an owner, anyone could eat it. Masha Enkein, the oila is only burnt on the mizbech. There is no achila by it. So that's a kula, legabi applying a din of achila, maybe it doesn't apply to oila because it's not eaten at all. So Rava has thoroughly answered up all of the kal v'chaimas that Reb Shimon was using to make all the psukim here extra, to learn all those different dinim. Rav is saying that you can't, all these kal v'chaimis I have a kash on. So Elamai, Dilida Emek, Reb Shimon, what is he saying? That everyone should medaven, that their children should be like Reb Shimon if he was able to dispute everything he said. So Reb Shimon was very clever, that when he was darshaning the pasuk, he realized he has to start from the end and go backwards in order to make this tower, because one kal v'chaimer was built on the previous kal v'chaimer. He had to do it in a reverse order in order to achieve that. So it was even though it was pirchas on all his kal v'chaimer, the fact he was able to make the kal v'chaimer work in the first place by doing it backwards was very impressive. Now they're going to ask the question that we had referenced before. What is Rav Shimon doing altogether? V'chi mazhir min hadin? How could you learn all these things out from a kal v'chaimer? We know that there's a din. You can't learn that you get a Makkos from the fact that you have a kal v'chaimer. Say this is mochamer, therefore it should get Makkos. And like we said the other day, the way to remember that is because every punishment the Baruch gives has an element of kapara, and maybe this person is not entitled just because he's mochamer. Who says he's entitled to that kapara? So tomorrow, even though there's a mandam who says if you want to determine what einish you get, you can learn that out from a kal v'chaimer. Even he agrees, ein mazhir minadin. You can't say that the Torah has to say both an azhara, say you can't do it, as well as telling you what the einish is. Even if you hold you can determine what einish is appropriate, to say that you can't do it, that you can't learn out from a kal v'chaimer. So tomorrow, isura ba'alma. When Rav Shimon was saying that you're getting Malkus and all these things, he wasn't coming to say that you really get, literally you get Malkus. Very often the Gemara will say you get Laika Allah. What it really means is that it's usher to do it. It doesn't mean a little that Bezdin will take the straps out and give him 30 in Malkus. It means it's usher to do. So he's learning from here that you're not allowed to do it, but not that it's going to be a full-fledged Chiyav Malkus. Correct, Gemara, is that true that he doesn't mean that you get actual malchus? Amar Rava, zar sha'achal min oila, a zar that eats an oila lifnei zrika, before the zrika sadam, chutz l'chayma, outside of the chayma of Yerushalayim, l'Rav Shimon like a chamish. According to this brayso that we just said b'shem Rav Shimon, where we learned out all these different isurim, according to Rav Shimon, he's going to get 5 malchus. So once he's saying that he gets 5 malchus, it means actual malchus. What are the 5 malchus? So let's see. Azar, first of all, we're talking about an oila, it's kachi kachim. Azar is not allowed to eat an oila. You're not allowed to eat a carbon. And we're talking about an oila. An oila no one's allowed to eat. Even a kain's not allowed to eat it. So he gets a second malchus for that. He's a zar, and he's eating an oila, and it's lifnei zrika. So it hasn't, even if it was something that you were allowed to eat, you wouldn't be allowed to eat it till the zrika. So he gets a third malchus for that. And he's chutz l'chayma. So first of all, it's kachi kachim, that if it was allowed to be eaten, it would have to be eaten within the Beis Hamikdash in the client would have to, and then he's not only not eating it in, so he gets one chiyuv for eating it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and he's also eating it outside of Yerushalayim. So that's 5. But in any case, you see, the Shimon is talking about these are all things we learned out from that pasuk from his Kal V'Chaimes. But we're saying he gets actual Malchus. It's ein mazir min adin. So Gemara Isurin happen. All he means to say is that the Isurin, even though he says like a chamish, what he means to say is chamish Isurin have. He's being over on 4 Isurin. It's Isura ba'alma, like we said before. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says Elohein Aloikin. It includes someone who eats from the Bikurim before the Kriya. And that's our Mishnah. You can't say Elu El Aloikin. It's not talking about Malka. That's going to really throw off the whole parak. Elakro Yiseru. What he means to say is that all of these psukim here are extra psukim. These are the 2 psukim. There's the psukim. The pasuk Devarim Yud Beis Vav, it says this is not the same pasuk that we read before. That was Yud Zayin. This is back in that Vav, and it says it says over there also in this first list of the same list. It also says that you have to eat it in front of in Yerushalayim and by Hashem, by the Rebbeinu Shalom, and then it repeats it again. Lichta Rachmana. So why do we have to then repeat the whole list again in Pasuk Yud Zayin? What does the Torah have to say the whole list again? It's coming to say an extra lav. We have an extra lav here, and that's why we're learning it. It's not just because of the Kavachayim, but because this whole list is extra, and therefore we go back and we learn all of them. We learn all the things that Rav Shimon learned. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We will believe that there.